I'm so delighted to be back here again with you. And as I thought about what to talk to you about, one theme just keeps coming in my prayer time, and that is to encourage you and also to tell you that God takes joy in you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for what you do for kids. I was going to end with that, but I thought, why not begin with that as well? That in the same way that we have joy in our children, God has joy in us, especially when we're going His direction. We're taking care of children who need special care. We're going God's direction. So I want to talk a little bit about what play does in our lives, the lives of our children. Playing with our kids enhances attachment, positive mood, brain development. And a quick review on attachment. Why are we so interested in attachment? I've talked different times about attachment, but what we found is that there are different types of attachment. Some of the types of attachment means that kids are attached to or they have a close relationship with somebody who scares them, who makes them feel out of balance, who makes them feel like they're the ones who have to be in charge. It's maybe somebody who hurts them. So to get care, you have to get hurt. The kind of attachment we're trying to form with our kids is called a secure attachment. And when we have secure attachments with our kids, what they anticipate when they come close to us is that they're going to be feeling safe and valued. And gradually, as they get in sync with us, what happens is that we have very positive brain patterns that they start to resonate with. They begin to develop the same brain pattern just by being with us. And so we have this beautiful download into the developing brain of our stress patterns into their brains. Let me say that more clearly. Another way, where it's the way that we cope with stress actually has a brain firing pattern, something we call a neural firing pattern. And as kids sync up with us, they have that ability to begin to download that neural firing pattern, that brain firing pattern, so that our stress patterns become reflected in their brains. That's really kind of magical, because what we found is that you don't have to be biologically related to somebody to change their brain or influence their brain. Isn't that kind of interesting? And so what occurs is actually those experiences, they hit the DNA, there's a little burst of protein, and there's neural growth from that. I'm not going to go a lot further into that because that's not the main point of my talk. But one of the things that I want you to know is you're doing something really dramatic and wonderful in your kids' brains when you sync up with a secure attachment with them. And when we're playful, when we're positive with our kids, when we're joyful, it reduces their stress. And when we play with them, it reduces our stress as well. And it helps in the development of empathy. We can talk more about that in an afternoon session, but I'll just leave that stand for now. As we move into attachment behaviors, though, how many of you have kids that when you start forming attachment with them, you get close, you put an arm around them, you say, "I love you," they kind of move back. It's like, yeah, this is too much. This seems kind of scary. I remember somebody who I was close to before, but when I got in touch with them, they kind of blew me out of the water, or I lost them. Or I lost 4 people I got close to, and that didn't work out so well for me. I got moved. I got placed in a different family. Or maybe they have loyalty issues. Like one little girl said to me, "Deborah, I just feel like I need to keep some space from my mom." And I said, "Why is that?" She said, "It just doesn't seem fair to my birth mom to love her." Okay, and that's just a really typical 6-year-old reaction. So they feel a little bit conflicted. Not a little, they can feel very conflicted, like it's either or. Or and I've already covered this next one. I always get ahead of myself on the slides. So many signals to be closer, to be attached, may be scary for kids, but our play is usually a wide open opportunity. Most kids who are from very high stress beginnings, and they haven't had many adults who had the opportunity to play with them. So they'll enter into play when they won't risk other ways of being close. So what we found is play is one of the most enjoyable ways to build attachment. So we look for excitement in our play, movement, exaggerated expressions. In other words, just a little pepped up from what you normally would have, some creativity, and some body contact. Some people are so concerned about their kids getting kind of revved up, and they're feeling like, oh, we really got to keep things under control. This place is already rocking. We don't want to play anymore because we don't know what's going to happen next. One kid said to me, the only thing worse than Sergey being sad is Sergey getting really happy, you know? And so I'm not talking about you play right before bed, the kids are all revved up, and then the husband says, gee, I've had a really hard day here. Would you take over, honey? And then when I look at this audience, I'm also aware that about 30% of adoptive or foster parents today are single parents, so it's not like you can pass the baton very much. But nevertheless, I think that if we're going to really enjoy our kids, we have to have a more dynamic play. It's not like, let's play and we'll do this puzzle very quietly together. Or let's play the alphabet game. Here is an A, here is an ape. Let's put these two together. I'm not talking about that kind of play, but I mean one that's really joyful. So this is a really good-looking woman with her good-looking daughter. And this happens to be my therapy couch. And by the way, it's a lie when I said that I've been working in children's therapies for 20 years. It's quite a few years more than that, but it just seemed a little better for me to keep that number solid at this point. I think the couch is starting to get that old. Anyway, but as you see, she's sitting here, and she's stroking the bottom of her daughter's feet. And that's a way to entice kids to play with you, get playful, move into attachment behaviors. Look at this as she strokes her daughter's face. See the body contact, the kind of the building excitement. This is the expression that means joy to me. Or here's a little guy, he's getting ready for an airplane ride. He's going to be swung through the air. And this is what's after the airplane ride. Okay, you can see this just melding into each other. And so what we're able to do with play is to move into attachment in a particularly wonderful way. Play also helps kids learn to get excited and then calm down. And they can follow your lead in calming down, kind of. It's an emerging skill. But then perhaps they're going to get excited again. So you're teaching kids to have fun and attention without breaking rules or irritating you. And a lot of you have had kids who figured out that the only way to get something in the way of attention in the past is to be irritating or be relentless. With kids who are neglected, their brains are formed to respond to the vivid. You can co-opt this by making the vivid your choice, and making the most exciting and fun thing in the room something that you're introducing. You can interrupt patterns that you don't care for with the unexpected playful interaction. And at this point, I thought it might be kind of fun to do some role play up here. And so, we have a family that's going to join us. Why don't you come on up? Yes, we have some mics here. And you can kind of share the mics around. There are 4 of them, and there are 5 of you. But I figured we can shake it up a little bit. And so, what we're going to do is maybe have Jen here, And Jen, you're going to have your kids here at the breakfast table. And perhaps you have kids, and you're not going to sit down, Jen, because you really don't very much, do you? Okay, so when they were asking for chairs, there are 5 of you, but I knew that 4 chairs would do it. One of the adults would be standing. So why don't 4 of you, 1 adult, and 3 kids sit down? Thank you so much. All right. So you say your kids are kind of in a sour mood. Their pattern in the morning is...
Oh, they're not usually too sour. They're pretty
they
playful.
are? They're pretty playful. Well, let's pretend you're kind of sour in the morning.
Grumpy?
Okay, kind of grumpy in the morning. You're doing it so well. Okay, and so then I wonder if you would say, by the way, it's hat morning.
All right. By the way, it's hat morning.
Okay. So, choose a hat.
That's the cowboy.
All right. There are 2 on here. So let's. Okay, who wants to be the other cowboy?
All right.
And his hair looked so good. There we go. So, how do you feel about the morning now? Do you feel like playing? I'm sorry, but you're going to have to exceed yourself here. You're making me look bad. Okay. No, I'm giving him a hard time. But just by introducing a bunch of hats, everybody can become more playful, right? Do you feel like saying something about your hats? It doesn't have to be anything special, but it just changes the mood. Or
we did make Crystal the boss, obviously.
Oh, Crystal, are you the boss? Yes, I see you got your bobby hat on. I wonder if you could say hello to the audience in an English accent. Somebody help her and give her a few lines here. Give her a start.
Can you give her the English accent for us?
You have to switch hats first.
Yeah.
Can you say good morning?
Good morning.
So,
Top of the morning to you.
and it's a very nice thing. Or what it would be like and why don't you pretend you're kind of younger kids? Or if you were on your way in after kind of a rainy afternoon and your mom said you were welcome to come to the table for dinner after you do a stunt. So you'll have to do one acrobatic stunt before you join us at the table. I wonder if you would do your stunt first, please. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Go, Jeff. Here it comes. Can you do a somersault? Okay. Okay, Crystal. Are you going to go, Zach?
Wants to eat this morning.
Crystal, it's just fine. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Would you go over and just smile at the audience and let them observe your loveliness for the day? having a regular breakfast, and you decide it's time for Google glasses.
We definitely need some of these.
Definitely need some of these. And not to be left out. Thank you so much. And, we can also introduce magic wands if we wanted to. And
These are good. You can keep them under control this way.
so I think that this will conclude this section of it. But thank you very much for your activity and guidance. And you can keep the glasses if you want. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So even though these are, just perfect children and the ideal family, if you do have a pattern that you want to interrupt, this is this way to do it, the way to do it. So another thing that we want to do with our play is to kind of shake it out a little bit. A lot of our kids build high cortisol during the day. That is, it's a reaction to stress. And what we find is that as the day goes on, they have a lot of pressures, a lot of frustration, and maybe we do too, that we need to move. And if we have some playful interaction, especially that's athletic, that has a lot of jumping around to it, then that kind of movement helps us to have a release for the energy that they're building up. And for the energy that you're building up too. So if you have some activity that's playful and a lot of fun, like how many of you have ever played flashlight tag in the winter time in your house? You know what that is? Yeah. You turn off the lights and you hide and have flashlights and you play. Well, by the time you do that, everybody's in such a wonderful mood. And I remember as a kid, we used to play tag in the house, and my favorite place was in the bottom of those garment baskets or bags. Did your parents have those? Yeah, my mom had those. We'd stand in there until the bottoms gave out, and then we were found. Anyway, it was a great deal of fun. Often through play, we're able to arrive at the tender moments, though. At the end of the play, everybody's relaxed enough, they've had a good time, and those times are like, I like spending time with you, the eyes and smile. Or you're so cute with little snuggle. Like when the kids were up here and they were playing around, how many of you felt kind of endearing thoughts towards them? Of like, what neat kids, what a neat family. And that's that kind of attention that you want to be given to the kids quite a bit. When kids are running high cortisol, they have more misbehavior. When you run high cortisol, they also have more misbehavior. And control battles abound. Philip Fisher is a researcher at the Oregon Social Learning Program, and they started measuring foster parents' cortisol levels. And they found that if they could bring the parents' cortisol levels down, even if they didn't do anything for the kids started to improve because they sync up with you. And so if we can, and I don't do this to make you feel guilty, but to free you to enjoy your lives a little bit more, to take care of yourselves, to feel some sense of value to your own care for your moods. So we need to play too. Physical play is one of the easiest ways for both you and the kids to get your cortisol levels down. And if your child doesn't want to play, you should. And indirectly, as I mentioned before, it will help your child due to the way that your brain hormone levels influence theirs. Schedule time in your calendar to play with your children. Enjoy them without working on like they're a project. A lot of times we have parents who have children in their home, and it's kind of like they pick, like they've got to get through this whole list to make the child acceptable. Well, when's the time to really treasure and enjoy that child? One time I had lunch with Michelle. Andrew was there for a little while, and Anna was there. We had a great lunch. Anna felt sweet and treasured and valued, and you know what? She did not eat all her food. And her mom didn't even seem to care, didn't fuss over it, didn't try to take all the leftovers to put under the seat till it turned bad. She just let the experience be a good one. And I think it was such a wonderful afternoon. And I was just thinking about that as an example of the way we want to be treating our kids. If you're working with kids, maybe you're going to work on one or two things. But you don't want to be after them all the time to point out what they're doing wrong. You want to notice what they're doing right and start to find precious the real nature of that child, the essence of them. What is their particular bent that you can value? Teach your child that they're worth loving right now, this minute, without changing. Sometimes when I'm talking to kids, they don't feel lovable. And I'll say something to them like, "Oh, you're very lovable. You got a few characteristics right now that make you wear on people. A little hard to like at times, but you are lovable." And I say that because I really believe deeply that's the truth. Sometimes I run into mean parents who feel like they're doing it for the good of the child. They're highly controlling, thinking that that's more like God. This is particularly a trap. If you've had poor parenting, you don't have like this kind of true north of how do you set things up so that you can enjoy your family life. There's a lot of watch out or what if or harsh parenting that can come from that, and very authoritarian parenting. And not authoritative, but authoritarian. It's kind of like my way or the highway. That parenting is research-based to lead to disorganized attachments with avoidance. There's a kind with poor outcomes. That's not where we're heading. So we want to teach joy by example, not, we'll have a good time after you shape up, I'll win, even if it means that we're miserable together, and dull and boring is godly. How many of you want to dress like and act like a Puritan? Not very many. And they thought, that was kind of a joyless time, but somehow we've got this kind of drift into some of our thinking that is more godly, that kind of extraordinary religiosity. But a scripture that I thought of for all of you was Psalm 113. The Lord exalts the humble. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. That's all of us. He makes the barren woman abide in the house, is a joyful mother of children. Praise the Lord. Yeah. And it's that joyful mother that so appealed to me because I felt that was a scripture for us today. Or 2 Samuel 6:14. This may be one that some of the guys can resonate with. And David was dancing before the Lord with all his might. And David was wearing a linen ephod. That is, he was dancing in today's equivalent of his boxers. And as he was bringing the Ark of the Covenant in, back to the temple. He knew how to celebrate, and he pleased God. So consider lightening up yourself, but you can keep your pants on. So when we get afraid for our children and they become too serious, we have to know God's already in their futures. You don't have to carry it by yourselves. And besides, your negativity will practically ensure that they want to avoid your directions. Because that negativity is something that kids really have a hard time forgiving. They'll forgive you a lot of things as parents. If you lose hope for them, that's really hard to forgive. Your own parents lose hope. Because how can you maintain it for yourself if your parents can't have that sense? And we already did the comparing meal times to the play. Play build, I want to move on into another section then, a little more brain-based with some executive functioning. Play helps us also with our executive functioning. And executive functioning is planning, focusing, shifting attention, self-monitoring, inhibiting impulses. These are very common problems after high-stress beginnings. And the reason is, when we're under high stress, we circulate a high-stress hormone mixture, for want of another word, through our system. And that shapes our brain in a particular way to get ready for an immediate reaction, to really be wired to the vivid, not to inhibit, but instead have a quick response. You can see that would be very adaptive if you're in a high-stress beginning. But what play does, there's a group of people who started to work with Vygotsky's Tools of the Mind. He was a developmental psychologist, worked a lot on ways to develop executive functioning, and then Adele Diamond and her group have furthered that work. But they found that play actually builds executive functioning. And we've also found that if we can build secure attachments in kids, keep them feeling safe, that the brain has a window of recovery. And then often kids that we thought, gosh, they're pretty impacted with some of the prenatal exposure they experienced or the trauma in their early life, we find that they are actually doing much better than we thought they would do, because we're seeing this window of recovery again. And that some of that work is through the Oregon Social Learning Project. So play helps kids stay with a play theme. So it helps with working memory. It inhibits their impulses to move off. So at the play here, how many of the kids moved away? They didn't. They're just, the play theme is keeping them right in that spot. They self-monitor. And in play, you have to kind of keep yourself in check so that the other person doesn't leave. Well, how many of you have kids who are just learning this, and one of their friends comes over and says, I can remember one of my daughter's friends said to her, I don't want to play My Little Ponies anymore. If you're playing My Little Ponies, I'm going home. I'm tired of playing My Little Ponies. My daughter was dismayed. She says, then if she doesn't want to play My Little Ponies, she doesn't need to play with me. I'll play alone. And then she got lonely. And then after a while, she figured she could inhibit that desire to play My Little Ponies so she could have a partner to play with her. And so she went on to play elves and give the other person a turn. And then they plan. They get props and stay with the play plan. You don't want to provide too many props because you want them to use their imagination some and use that working memory some. And there's some flexibility. They adapt the play to suit the other person and cope with limited props. So those are all things that play helps. Play helps them get the big picture. What's the main point of the play experience? It's another thing that's impacted with executive dysfunction is they'll see a lot of details, but they don't get the big picture. Do you have kids who struggle with this? They just, the overriding theme is difficult for them to comprehend. And play helps with memory. What should I be doing in my play? What do I have to remember? Instead of having all of the props around me or a script, they're using those capacities. And play improves mood. Family fun's one of the best predictors of family self-esteem. That is, it's a good thing to be a member of this family. It reduces everyone's stress. And it brings our kids close. It shapes their brains for a safe world. And I thought I'd show you this picture. This is a pretty stressed mom. If you aren't a therapist, maybe you just notice people's body language. This is a single mom. See how her shoulders are up in the air? And the baby's really looking at the bottle. She's a little worried because, I don't need to go into too much of it, but she was worried whether her baby would take the bottle. And as you can see, she's got a lot of stress on her face and in her body. Now look at the play. It's a tremendous difference in her attitude. The baby is keeping eye contact. There's movement. There's skin-to-skin contact. Because he's a little guy, we could just put him naked up there, and not be improper about it. But do you see just that lightening up? Which experience causes the child to look for her eyes? Yeah. And so, as I finish some of this, one of the things that I want to say to you is, be encouraged. I want you to know that God enjoys you. Take time to play and to enjoy the life that you've been given with your children. Enjoy the ride. And don't feel like you're so pressured in your day-to-day life that you have to now put play as one of the things that you now must do with your child. It's not meant to be that kind of a whip over you. Instead of it, it's the encouragement to make play one of the first things that you do for your child and your family, just as a release, is a way of having freedom together. Does that make sense to all? So it's not like, oh no, I went to hear Deborah Gray, and now I realize in retrospect I should have played with my child all those years. Think of the lost opportunities. This is one more thing to feel guilty about. And now, when the teacher says, or the neuropsych says there should be your child has executive functioning, I've got one more thing I've missed if only I'd known. Don't go that way. Instead, it's never too late to start to enjoy your life. It's never too late to play. It's never too late to start to enjoy some of the vitality of just being free in a state of enjoyment and appreciation for another individual. And start to clear the decks. Get rid of a lot of things that you're already doing so that you can move your kids' performance up 5% or 2% in some area. And maybe do something that's really going to be a big building block in how you improve your relationship with your children from now on into the future. A lot of people say, how can I really improve the quality of my family? And one of the things that I say to the kids, say to them is, play with your child at least 15 minutes a day. And if you can get a half hour, do that. And, it's not that you're watching them on a soccer game where they're playing with somebody else, but you're out there kicking the soccer ball with them, maybe playing some basketball with them. You're doing something that's highly enjoyable for the two of you. And if you don't have anything that you already do with your children that you find enjoyable, well, then start to experiment and find some things that maybe you do enjoy. Sometimes it takes some experimentation, especially if you're a very different kind of person than your child. I had a parent who said, I have never had a single athletic endeavor that's appealed to me. I like a lawn chair and I like a beach. With an umbrella, please. And my kid is an athlete. But it took some doing, but we found some things that they both enjoyed playing together and enjoying together. So sometimes, it takes some experimentation. How hard of a task is it to try about 20 things you think that you might enjoy together and come up with your top 5? I mean, this is not a harsh sentence, people. It's pretty good. And often it means you have to clear the decks of a lot of things that are standing in the way that keep us too busy to really enjoy our lives. If you want to know how to figure out what things you should omit, how many are you here with a really good friend or a spouse? Okay. Turn to each other and they'll have a really good hint for you as to 2 or 3 things that you do that are really not meaningful or necessary. And what I've often done is just suggested to people, take about 5 things and each have them on the list. Or you can go up to 10 if you're really eager beavers. And then you get to barter to get 2 or 3 of those things back, but the rest of them you have to drop. And I've done this with couples before. I had a guy say, "The pastoral search committee? You want me to leave the pastoral search committee?" And his wife is, "Yes, you." And he's come up with something else that she's part of that's really standing in their way of them having a vital, enjoyable time with their family. But that's actually what I'm suggesting that you do. Don't let the mundane kind of busyness of this culture stand in the way of true vitality and enjoyment in a house full of joy. And I think that then you'll move into that promise that we had before in those scriptures. And that sense of dancing, that sense of being, a happy woman or a happy man, joyful in the midst of children. And instead of having this kind of barren, worn out feeling about us, we'll have a sense of fullness and fulfillment. And we'll be able to feel some of that joy coming from God, that joy of being in the presence of our Creator. So that's what I've got for today. So again, I just want to say to you, I believe that God finds joy in all of you. Be encouraged this refresh weekend, and thank you for what you do for kids.